I'll be showing you how to make an initial D-style car animation. So the first thing we're gonna need is a car. Alright, so in order to get the car model, let's go into Roblox Studio. If you don't have it, just download Roblox, it'll automatically come with it. So what you want to do now is in the toolbox, click the sort button and include unverified creators, and now you can type in any car name you want. In my case, I'll just get an 86. So once you got the car ready, there's gonna be one thing we gotta pay attention to. It's whether if the car has pop-up headlights or not, and if it does, we should separate those headlights from the body of the car. So you do that by alt clicking on the headlights and then dragging them over the workspace so it becomes two separate objects, the headlights and the body, so it's not as big of a hassle later on to animate them. So now you just right click the name of the car and export selection and choose a folder you want. And I'll conveniently do that for the pop-up headlights as well, so we have like two objects to animate easily. So that's it, we have the car. Now we just need to import OBJ into Blender. Now find wherever you exported it, and don't forget to import the pop-up headlights as well. And if you can't see your car, just click the dot on the numpad so the camera goes over to the car. Okay, so once you're done importing, click the pop-up headlights, shift click the main body of the car. Now do Ctrl P, set parent to object, keep transform. And now the pop-up headlights become a part of the car's main body. Now click A, right click, set origin to center of mass surface. Here's what this does. This is what would happen if you didn't fix the center of mass. And this is what would happen if you did fix it. So I hope that makes things clearer in terms of what this is. Now next thing you should do is click N, and you see these transform location things. I want you to drag over them and type 0 so the car goes into the center of the world. Then click dot on your numpad so the camera goes to the car, and that's it. Use the numpad numbers to look around from different angles for the car. You should size it down to like 4 blocks. On Blender you can see those cubes. Make it like 4 cubes and drag it up so that the car is on the red line. Now I'll go to material preview mode so that we can start making the car look good enough. Click the car, click tab to go into edit mode, click A, click M and merge by distance. And now click Alt J, so this just makes the car easier to work with. Now when you're in edit mode, click 3 on your keyboard, not the number pad 3, just the 3, and it lets you select faces. Now click the part of the car that you want to paint and click select in the material tab. Now get out of edit mode by clicking tab. Next step is to have the Blender kit add-on, and I'll show you how to get that add-on real quick. Go to edit, preferences, add-ons, and type in Blender kit. And Blender already comes with it, so just enable it and you're gonna have this search bar. Now make sure you've selected this ball here. It basically means a material, so select the material and then type in tune or car shader or something. Tune car shader. This is something I found which works pretty well, so I'm gonna use this. And now I'll go into render mode and I'll add the sun. I forgot to add the texture to the pop-up headlights, so I'll do that as well. And by the way, if you want to move with WASD in Blender, click shift plus the key that's the left to 1. It's like the console key in games. I don't know what it's named. So you can do the same thing for the trim, but since my car has a black trim, I don't think it'll make a big of a difference, so I'll just replace the texture of the windows by selecting the windows, then going to Blender Kit, selecting the material, duplicating it, and then changing the color to black. Now this depends on the car, but your taillights might be messed up like mine are, so just click the taillights, click select, and then move those around. That's supposed to be a glass, but we don't need it, so I'll delete it. I'll just save the file real quick, and now we're gonna move on to making the outline for the car. There's a lot of ways to do this, but we're gonna go to materials, click the plus, click new, and now change the surface to background, make it black, and enable backface culling. Now go to modifiers, add a solidify modifier, go to normals and flip them, and set the materials to like 300 or something, so just set them really high so the newest material gets added. Now set the offset to 1, and the thickness is something you can play with and set it to your own liking. Now as you can see, this is not gonna be perfect because you see the line on the hood. There's gonna be some issues with this on different models as well, but most of the time you just gotta delete some vertices to fix this, so that's just what I'm gonna do right now. Yeah, so this is pretty weird and I don't know what causes it, but there, I deleted those vertices below it and now it's fixed. I'm also gonna remove the outline from the window because it's messed up on the front and you can't even tell, so what I'm gonna do now is click the window, click 3 in my case to select the faces. Then I'll go to materials, I'll select it, I'll separate it by clicking P, then I'll click the windows as a separate model, and I'll turn off the solidify modifier. So that looks way better now. And now I'll be fixing the lights because I want it to be a night scene. So right now I'm adjusting it so that it looks good, and I think it does, so let's move on to turning the lights on. You do that by clicking the headlights, going into edit mode, click the actual lights and select them. Separate them by clicking P, now click on them, and then you're gonna wanna go to shading mode if you're not already in there, and plug the first texture into the emission and wait for it to load. And now you can bump up the emission and the lights are gonna light up. And I'll turn on bloom so that it looks better. Now the rear lights, I'm gonna click on the car body, I'm gonna click on the lights, I'll click select, click P, separate them. And you can do the same thing here. Go to shading, plug in the first texture into emissions, and then you can bump it up and make it light up. But it's also gonna light up the blinkers and the rear lights, so we're gonna fix that. And by the way, you can keyframe these rear lights so that when the car brakes, they light up more. Right now, we're gonna go into edit mode and make these be like separate sections, so you just separate them basically by hand. It's gonna be way easier if it's a good quality model. And I'll separate these one more time because the reverse lights are lighting up and they gotta go. So also don't forget that each time you separate it, you also have to duplicate the material because each light has gotta have its own emission instead of it all lighting up at the same time. Okay, so now is, in my opinion, the coolest part because I figured this out on my own and it was kind of cool. What we're gonna do now is Shift A, add a new plane, then we're also gonna give it a mirror modifier, and then enable clipping and play with the axes so that it twists, does the thing where it twists in the middle. I mean, not twist, but like touches itself in the middle. There we are. So now I'm gonna click number 7 on the numpad, and I'm gonna make loop cuts by clicking Control R. And I'm gonna basically make the shape of the car as best as I can. Just keep making more loop cuts. If you don't know how to do this, click 1 on your keyboard so that you can select each vertices, and then you're gonna have a shadow of the car once you're done with this. So there it is. I finished the shadow. It might look shitty, but it does its job. So now we're gonna make a new material for it. Make it black and turn off specular for the sake of God, because I hate specular. And that's it, that's the shadow. And if you're wondering how it's gonna stick to the road, we're gonna add a copy location and copy rotation constraint to it, and give it a shrink wrap so that it basically flops up on the road. It doesn't have to be attached to the car itself, so I'll apply the mirror modifier and we're done here with the shadow. Next thing I'll do is separating the wheels from the car itself. So I'm just gonna go to edit mode, click the wheel, select it, shift click another part of the wheel, select that as well, and then I'll just check if that's the whole wheel. In my case it is, so I'll separate it. Now I'll click the wheel itself. I'll turn on X-ray so I can select them easier and separate each wheel. Now I'll set the origin to center of mass on each wheel. And the car is almost ready to be animated. Google a rig a car and just get this add-on. It's free. It's not the best, and I would recommend you to use something else, but for now let's just use it. Okay, so once you've downloaded it, go to preferences, add-ons, install, go to the location of it, and just install it. That's it for the installing part. Right now, everything is not parented to the car, so I'll just hide the wheels and the shadow by clicking H. After clicking them, I'll click A, shift click the main car body, click Control P, and parent keep transform. After that, I'll just delete these brake rotors because you can't even see them through the wheels, and that's that. Now we gotta rename each wheel, and this has to be done very specifically since we're using rig a car. And also your car has to be facing the negative Y direction. Make sure you do that, it's important. And now we have to do the naming system. It has to be done exactly like this. Basically, just copy this. T means Truino in my case, so something dash wheel dot front left, front right, you get it. And the body has to be something dash body. So just make sure you copy that in case you're using rig a car, which we are. So now I'll just hide the shadow and the sun. Click A, Shift A, add armature, car deformation rig, and that should work for you. If it doesn't, look up some tutorial or join Kosaku Roku-san's Discord server and people are gonna help you out there. So now I'll just put this root part a little more down. Once that's ready, you just click the car rig, you click N, you go to rig a car, generate rig, and it works. All that's left to do is to configure the shadow. For that, we click on the shadow, go to constraints, add constraints, copy location, and you add the car's body in here. Then you add another constraint, copy rotation, and you add the car's body as well. So then you fuck with the axes until it works. Then you click the shadow, click tab, put it lower, closer to the ground. And later on we're gonna add a shrink wrap modifier so it wraps onto the road, so that if you go inside a gutter or something, the shadow doesn't look weird. It won't float over the road. It's gonna like behave like a real shadow. So for that we have to make a road now. So let's make a plane and make it roughly 2 car lengths in width, so it looks like a road that way. What I'll do here is I'll click 2 to edge select. I'll select one edge, then I'll shift select the other one. I'll click E to extend these edges, and then I click S to scale them outwards. I make some loop cuts in the road, select those loop cuts and scale them on the x-axis a little bit so that it looks like a smoother gutter. And yeah, I just make this look like a gutter basically. Now the model's ready, so we have to go to shading and now shift A, add image texture, and open an image texture. In my case, I already have an image texture, a road texture. What you should do is go online and try to find a road texture somewhere, and once you have it, plug it into the base color, and that's it. In my case, it worked perfectly fine, and I don't know why, but it just did. So usually you have to do some UV wrapping, and you can look up some tutorials on how to do that. And right now what I did was plug this texture to emission and make it glow a little bit. It looks way better for the night scene. And I'll change the textures on the edges of the road as well. Okay, so that's done, and now we need some trees. For that, go into Google, type in tree PNG, and as you can see, some of these trees are actually transparent, and you can tell that by Google giving it those dotted shits in the background basically, but some of the images have that on for no reason and they're actually not transparent. So just copy that image, any image you want, and you go to remove.bg, and it gives you a clean usable PNG texture. So once you've done that, go to Shift A, add images as planes, and then just search for that texture and add it in. Now this tree texture, you go into material and you make it alpha clip, and same goes for the shadow. And now you click tab and you do Control D or Shift D and you rotate it by 90 degrees. Click R, Z and type 90. That basically gives you a tree looking thing right there. And what I'm gonna do here is Shift A and add a hue and saturation modifier, and I'll just make this a little more bluer because that gives me the initial D vibes. Then I'll just scale it to however I like it. No, I just want some tall trees in this case. And yeah, duplicate this tree because I wanted to have 2 trees here. Yeah, you're basically making this small section of the road, and then you're gonna duplicate it many times and fit it onto a curve. And now I'll make a guardrail. Basically you just make a cube and add some loop cuts and you make it shaped like a guardrail. Then I'll just add a guardrail texture. I mean some metallic texture I found online. And if you're too lazy to do these things, you can go into Blender Kit and you can just find roads, guardrails, trees, stuff. Alright, so now once all of this is done, we're gonna put an array modifier on each one of these parts and set the factor X to 0 and the Y to 1, and then bump up the amount. And that's basically it. we're also gonna wanna put the curve modifier on it later to fit it onto a curve. So repeat this for every other thing. So here I got kind of lazy. I didn't want to make my own like sky texture, so I went into Blender Kit and clicked HDRs, not materials, HDRs, and I typed in night. Then I chose this one, and it looks pretty good, so I'll just use it. And what we've left to do is to set up the road for the car to go on, like make it curvier. So the way we do that is by going to number 7 on the numpad, orthographic view, shift A, and we go to curve and path. And this little road, this little thing spawns in. I rotate it by 90 degrees. I scale it up. This is what the road is gonna follow. So I'll just make it curvy, like a toge. Basically, you click the last point and you click E, and that makes a new one where you can place it somewhere else. That's how we shape the road. Then you add a curve modifier to every single object, and as the target you place this thing we just made. And you may have to move it backwards a little bit. That's it. This is gonna be the road, and I'll do the same thing for the trees so they follow the road, and that's basically it. Yeah, these guardrails looked pretty funky, and that's because I forgot to put loop cuts in. So I just went into edit mode and I gave it some loop cuts, and now it should look perfectly fine. Yeah, compared to the other one, that's way smoother. And I'll do the same thing for the other one and the guardrails, and basically the whole thing is done. One more thing I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna add the lights in front of the car. You shift right click somewhere, and when you add a new plane or light or anything, it's gonna spawn there. So I added in a spotlight, then I adjusted some settings, I parented those lights to the car, and now we're ready to start animating. So here I click the path and I set the resolution of it to 100, and then you click the rig car components and you do Control Tab, and it goes into pose mode. Then I go into constraints and I add a follow path constraint, and as the target I add the path we just made. That's it, the car's following it. Now we just need to keyframe the path. So tick fixed position and add offset factor 0. Hover your mouse over it and click I. And then go to the end of the animation, so that would be like frame 250 for example. And set offset factor to 1 and keyframe it again. Now the car is gonna work. Also, I forgot to show it in the video, but click N, go into rig a car and click bake car steering and car wheel rotation. So rest of these things are pretty self-explanatory. You just move the car around, you move the tires, you move the angle, you control the angle of the drift, and all these things you have to figure out on your own. So I'll just do a time lapse of how I did it. Yeah, so moving around with WASD helps a lot. And also, I don't use rig a car, I just did it for this video. I usually use launch control because it's way easier. And rig a car always has issues. Like, for example, while making this video, the wheels just didn't rotate and I had to animate that on my own. So yeah, this is how I usually make animations. Like, nothing else, except I use launch control. But yeah, you can do the same thing with rig a car if you figure out how to use it properly. And yeah guys, good luck animating. And massive thanks to Gosoku Roku-san, because he inspired me to start animating, and his tutorial helped a lot. And you should join his Discord server if you need some help. Most of the guys there will help you. Goodbye.